Detective David Calloway. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So you serve the Mount Rainier community. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you do and how long you've been with the police department?
So I've been a police officer for a total of 13 years. I'm currently assigned to the Criminal Investigation Division. I supervise that division. We actually just started the Criminal Investigation Division 2 years ago here. So I was hired to create the Mount Rainier Criminal Investigation Division. So we handle all major crimes, investigations, anywhere from aggravated assaults, being shootings, stabbings, to sexual assaults, to fraud, theft, things of that manner.
So, Detective Calloway, you deal with some of the most complex cases that happen within the municipality, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And I know that you have worked very closely with our office, and we are very grateful for your service. But you worked with our office on some very, difficult cases, and you have been very supportive of our victims and really, integral in, achieving justice for our victims. And so, first of all, I want to thank you for your service, the work that you do, your professionalism, and the care that you take. To talk a little bit about a couple of cases that you were involved in recently that really were just heartbreaking cases involving women who were abused. Can you talk a little bit about Tyrone Oates and the you were involved in involving him?
Yeah, so Mr. Oates' case was very troubling. It all started when the first victim actually contacted our police department in reference to her assault with Mr. Oates. If I got to be transparent, we, as members of our police department, didn't handle initially that case, I would say, at their best. It took for the first victim to actually contact the police department again, because she didn't receive a report. That second call actually came to me, and my division went through and followed up and conducted interviews. Same thing happened with the second victim, and come to find out they were all tied in together. So we went out and did some follow-up work, conducted interviews, which later led to us conducting search and seizure warrants of his devices, cell phones, laptops, and things like that, where we saw a lot of the signs of domestic abuse.
So can you describe a little bit some of the information that you got from the victims, and what about the information provided from the victims really, made you think, look, this needs to be really investigated and we need to go all out on this case? What happened during that process that really focused you in on this case?
Well, with some of the information that we got from the first victim, which was she was initially assaulted by being punched in the face, dragged out of a car, threw over the guardrail, sustained a head concussion, neck injuries, and things like that. The first victim was very concerned about the second victim because of the behavior, which is huge in domestic cases. And I guess what she was seeing was a lot of the control that she was under from Mr. Oates. And I remember her telling me in an interview that she was concerned about the second victim. At that time, we did not have a lot of information about the second victim until the second victim came forward. And once we discovered information from her, we saw signs of abuse, of bruising on her body, throughout her whole body, and even graphic pictures and photographs of her being what we call false imprisonment.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you discovered through your investigation?
So the second victim, we discovered not only that, like I talked about earlier, with the bruising all over her body, but we discovered that she was actually placed in a dog cage. She was urinated on, ejaculated on. I mean, just stuff that you can't even imagine. Forced to eat dog food, mixed in with lighter fluid. We recovered that in a search warrant. We recovered the lighter fluid. We recovered the dog cage. I mean, we went above and beyond, even talking about getting it swab from the FBI. I mean, it was so much, evidence we were trying to gather so we can have a successful conviction, with Mr. Oates.
And so I know that obviously you did your job and did it well, but can you talk about the human side and the emotional toll that a case like this and other cases can have on an officer and even a seasoned veteran like you?
Absolutely. That's something that I've been studying, even in ministry school, where we talk about compassion fatigue. And this is something to where, you're running. I've been in the fire service for 20 years prior to being a police officer. So I've been in public safety like my whole life, if you will. But you run these calls so much and so often that sometimes you can become numb to it. So sometimes you have to, just what you said, you have to have that compassion and be human. Sometimes put yourselves in that position. If this is my sister, my mother, my brother, whoever, you got to put yourself in that position of that's your family member. And that's what helped me out. A lot of time I oftentimes see my family members in their place. And then, so I give them excellence and far as, doing my investigation. Definitely take time out to be human yourself, have that day where your weekend is to yourself, where you're not maybe taking any phone calls, you're hanging out with family, renewing your mind. A lot of times I read the Bible to help me renew my mind and get me reset for Monday, for the next day, so I can handle these cases successfully. Go out with your friends, be very social, just do things to clear your mind from these cases that can be, as one can consider it being traumatic.
Absolutely. And, Detective Calloway, just because of the, enormous work and the level of commitment you had to seeking justice in this case, you were able to bring us overwhelming evidence of his guilt against both women in terms of the crimes he committed against both women. And ultimately, Mr. Oates pled guilty. And even though the crimes that he was accused of amounted to what's considered second-degree assaults, which are technically misdemeanors with imprisonment up to, let's say, 10 years, though most people who are convicted of a second-degree assault, some of them get no time or very little time. In this case, he really got almost the max on every single charge, and the judge sentenced him to 40 years with all but 30 suspended. So 30 years of time that he has to spend behind bars for the crimes that he committed against these women. That must make you feel pretty proud.
Absolutely.
That almost never happens.
Yes.
In fact, it has not happened since I've been a state's attorney, where someone who was convicted of a second-degree assault got such a lengthy term. But I think it was because of just the heinous nature of the crime, but also the overwhelming evidence that we had. And I really thank you for that, because we have to, of course, work together to seek justice. And a large was the work that you did.
Thank you. It's when I sat there and heard the sentence when it was happening, I felt a chill come over me. I couldn't believe, like I said, I wasn't expecting it. And it was emotional. You might saw a tear come down my eye because the impact, and to see that there were actually other victims involved that came out of this, just wasn't the two we're talking about throughout the state of Maryland. And I believe in Virginia as well. So it was overwhelming. And to see that, how this can start from something that we think is a simple, report, dig into it, we see how big it really was. So.
Absolutely. What's your message? Do you have a message to not just victims, but also other members of law enforcement. I mean, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so we try to make sure that we highlight the issues around domestic violence, certainly all year round, but we focus on it a lot during this month. What is the message that you want to send to victims and then also other law enforcement officers who are often the first responders when victims reach out for help?
So it's two parts to this. My response to the victims is definitely report it and follow through. Oftentimes as patrol, when I was in patrol, I remember going to the call, you see someone who's a victim of domestic violence, you give them all the information, you try to go above and beyond to help them out, even if it's giving them rides to the commissioner's office so they can obtain a protective or ex parte order. A lot of times it's no follow through. They'll get the ex parte order, but they don't go to court, or a lot of times they're just mad at the time. Follow through with it, because as we know, these things escalate. Whether it's male or female, on either side, it escalates on both sides. So definitely report it. As for our law enforcement, I would say someone may not come out and say, "Hey, I'm being abused." So it's sometimes our job is to look at certain clues, certain situations. If you respond to a house and, you just see one half doing all the talking, another one sitting in silence or kind of in that fetal position, or, in this case, Mr. Oates had a camera, in his front door, watching people coming up and down the stairs from his apartment. So little signs and clues like that, hear them out, maybe sometimes remove them if you can. Hey, can I talk to you in another room? And definitely be patient. I think patience is a huge thing. They may not come around the first time, but maybe the second time they'll come around and let you know, and document every single thing that is going on concerning domestic violence.
Absolutely. Well, Detective Calloway, let me just say this to you if you've not ever heard this before, but you are a superhero.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. The work that you do is just, it's just so meaningful. And the fact that you care so much, I think, will change the lives of these young women who are being abused. The fact that someone cared, that there was one male who abused them, but then there was another male in their life who they encountered who protected them. That means so much. And so I really want to thank you personally. And I look forward to continuing to work with you. And, anything that we could do to support the work over there in Mount Rainier, we'll.
Absolutely.
And we know that you'll always be there for us. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I look forward.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.